Hello, bros. We're back. Got a story for you regarding some labor things my brother loves to talk about. So I sent you this story, Reese.
You did.
General gist of it is there's a guy who has not been following the Washington State mandates. He's kept his diner open and basically let his diners choose how they want to interact with one another, namely in the enforcement of masks. He's not enforcing masks inside his diner. And so he's been garnering fines from the state. And the state fines got up to, I think it was a few, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a day. He is now sitting at $367,000 in fines due to the government. And of course, he's just like, screw you, I'm not paying because I don't have that kind of money and I need to keep my business open. So, what would be the appropriate response to collect on those fines, do you feel?
I mean, I would think that you would bring him to court, right?
You would think you would bring him to court. That seems to me
Or
like
you
an
could
appropriate legal answer. What they did, as you know, is seize his payroll funds for money that had been set aside to pay his employees.
Yeah.
So,
It's COVID safety citations. But I mean, here's the thing. You know, for those of us regular folks, we've all been in debt. We've all had things that we can't pay, right? We've all had tickets we can't pay. You know, you get a ticket from traffic ticket and you can't pay it. You know, normally you can show up and do things about it. Or even if you don't show up and you spend a weekend in jail, they still can't take your money. Right? We don't have debtor's prison in the United States. Well, sort of. Depends. Some places do, like Indiana.
like IRS. IRS can do that to you.
But the IRS.
That's not debt.
Different.
It's
not
it is
debt,
but it is.
It's not. I mean, but it's not something you borrowed. Whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's not like a loan, right?
Right.
It's taxes.
Or, like, for example, if you can't pay your ticket, I had friends do this in college. They would go sit a weekend in jail and pay their fines off that way. And it counted toward a daily amount, for their fine. And they did weekends in jail as students because they couldn't pay. Anyway, you can't. And this is what I said the other day. So your plan has backfired because now you're hurting the little guy. You're hurting the labor. And so this I don't know. It's a bad decision all around. To just $367,000 is a lot of money. And did they just take it all at once? Like,
well, what they did is he had an account set aside with $8,700 to pay his weekly payroll, right? Whether it was weekly or monthly, I don't know how much, whatever, right? Like, it's a small diner. It's probably like two people's paychecks, maybe 3 or 4. Small town, right? And they just took all this money out of his accounts. He's like, I want to make sure we're clear. When it first happened, I shut down like everyone else. After months of following the rules that were all super confusing, wear your mask when you sit down, but then when you get up, but not when you're eating, he and his crew decided, you know what, we're just going to let people figure it out. We're not going to have a mask mandate in our store, in our diner. If they want to come in here, do what you want. I don't care. Get some food. Cool. We're here for you. Like, we're just here to serve our customers. I don't care anymore. And that's when the state office visits started, and they just wanted to, quote, educate me, as he says. Daily fines accumulated from $2,000 to now more than $367,000. I guess the interviewer asked him, wouldn't it have just been easier to make dining guests wear masks at the table? He says something about veterans, blah, 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 blah. He's like, who am I to tell them what they can or cannot do or cannot sit and whether or not they can or can't have a cup of coffee. That's not my cafe. I'm not doing that here. That's not America.
Yeah.
I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
I know this is a battle. It's up against the state, and it's not going to be easy. It's an uphill battle. It's going to be tough, and we're willing to fight. Getting a ton of support, blah, 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 blah. That's basically it. That's all this says. So they only interviewed this guy, it looks like.
So they only took $8,700, but that's what he needed for payroll.
Well, I think that's all he had set aside, but I don't know.
Like, I don't understand. Did he have it in a separate account that these people had access to? Did he have all his money in cash? Like, how did... You see what I'm saying? Like, how did they decide on that amount? And then was that... You see what I'm... Like, how did it get to that? Was $8,700... not that it matters in the grand scheme of things, but I'm just curious, like, why that much money?
So... I'm speculating, but I think it has to do with the type of account, right? So, like, even the IRS, if you, like, so I got a friend who owes a bunch of back taxes from, like, bad debts and things from his previous marriage. And the IRS is constantly, like, monitoring his accounts, or so he says. So he keeps all of his money in savings accounts.
Okay.
And because, like, they can't, for some reason, they can't touch the savings accounts. And he only moves money when he has to pay a bill, like, that day to his checking account. So he'll move some money, pay the bill. So his checking account rides at, like, $1 or whatever the minimum amount is. So that's how he protects his money. Now, it could be a situation like that where he had moved money early to clear it, because in that dollar amount, you know, it's less, it's more than $5,000 or whatever it is, and so the bank has to, like, take a day to clear the money through whatever clearinghouse routes they have, and then it's there, and then it can be paid out. So it could be a situation like that where he had money in a savings account or in cash to pay the payroll, and they took it before it cleared out. Because I'm sure this guy has done things to protect his money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find another story on this. Billy's Cafe. They're having a support breakfast for Billy's Cafe. They're in now they're cash only.
Skagit County, cash only, yeah.
In Skagit.
Skagit.
Cash only.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably what he did. He had money put in savings accounts that they couldn't touch, and he put it into another account, and they just took it. It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the answer to that is then I start paying everybody in cash.
Well, and like I said, it goes to now who are you hurting? Are you trying to teach this guy a lesson, or are you trying to teach his employees a lesson? Like, how are those employees going to get paid now? You're going about this the wrong way. And
well, to me,
you know,
it comes back to the idea of pushing everyone towards a cashless society, right? So it's like, if I take this story in conjunction with what happened with GoFundMe, right?
yeah.
And the Canadian truckers that we talked about last week. So they froze $9 million in assets. Of that, so I did a follow-up this week. $1 million was still, like, sitting in a bank in Canada. So the government and the bank itself The bank itself is trying to apply to give money to the government, give that $1 million to the Canadian government. So they're not trying to give it back to GiveSendGo or GoFundMe. To refund it. The bank, which had the money transferred through the bank and put into private accounts, has frozen those dollars and is now trying to apply to the government to take the money.
Wow.
So that's your Canadian bank right there.
Seems shitty.
Yeah.
Shady.
So they're not trying to give it back. So last week, I think that by the time we talked about this story, GiveSendGo had taken up the fight, taken up the fundraising pledge. To date, I think they're at like $10 million raised over a week. Wow. The Canadian government issued a court order. Well, it was a Canadian court issued an order that said, "Hey, stop doing this." And GiveSendGo said, "Screw you, I'm American. You have no jurisdiction over me. We'll figure out how to get them the money. You can't stop us."
Yeah.
There was another thing that started up using a, I don't know the website for it, but it was a cryptocurrency based fundraising thing, which they absolutely cannot stop.
Right.
And they've raised, I think, $2.5 million. So, like, the GoFundMe thing that they did, that they just pulled, has not only been exceeded, but now they're using multiple platforms to get around it, and they're cutting out the banks for transfer.
How are they doing that?
Cryptocurrency.
Oh, yeah.
So GiveSendGo is actually actively, they haven't done it before, but they've realized what's going on with the Canadian banks, especially with this recent thing. I think it was out of TD Bank or something like that. It wasn't TD Ameritrade, but it was some Canadian-based bank that had frozen the money, and so they're seeing this, and they're like, "Oh, we can't use your Canadian banks to transfer money to you. We are going to have to explore other options." And one of those options that they're looking at is, of course, the cryptocurrency.
Wow.
Because they can't stop that.
I just don't understand why you want to stop it anyway. That's fucked up. Like that's really... I want to use the word hegemonic, but I don't think that's the right word.
Well, I mean, it's the banks and the governments colluding together. It could be. I'd have to look up the definition of that, but it seems like it might be right. Definitely dictatorial, like.
Yeah. It says ruling or dominant in a political or social context. So, yeah.
Yeah. The hegemony is just the ruling.
The ruling people.
The ruling group. So, yeah. So this smacks to me of that kind of thing, because like the only people who've traditionally been able to take money directly, well, I guess that's not true. If you owe like alimony or restitution or whatever else to the courts, they can take your money directly out of your accounts, your checking accounts, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. But it's alimony, it's child support, or taxes, or student loans.
Well, but even then, not really. Not with student loans.
They can garnish your wages for student loans. Yes. You have to be to that point. But man, at this point, they work with you so much that like they don't really do that anymore. But they can.
Well, the last I checked was I think 30% had defaulted on their student loans.
Yeah.
There's no pays for years. So.
Yeah. For what? I'm telling you. Thank you for watching this episode of BroPartisan Hacks with Reese and Rob. We really, really appreciate you watching, tuning in. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to us. We're putting out content as often as we can. Share it with your friends. Get it out there. Get our names out there. Also, hit that bell, tap that bell right there so that you can get updated when we put out a new video. Rob and I are trying to pump these videos out as often as we can. However, we both have day jobs, we have families, so our schedules have to line up so that we can make a new video. speaking of our day jobs, our opinions and views expressed are our own and in no way represent those of our respective employers. Thank you. Thanks again for watching.